You ever feel like just this? Like, what is it? What's wrong with real estate? I mean, a lot. There's a lot that's great about it, but there's a lot that's wrong with it. The reason I know is because I've been investing in real estate for more than 30 years. I run a big real estate team called Streamlined Properties On-Market, brokered by eXp Realty. I've been licensed for 7+ years now. So I've seen every aspect of real estate over the years. But what I can tell you is from my background, I'm really like an ethicist. I really want everything to like run and follow the rules. And real estate is a disaster in that aspect. It's just like there's no real way to know who knows what. So I'm going to come up today with 5 things that are wrong with real estate because I know when you're pulling your hair out at night looking through properties, you're probably asking yourself, like, again, what's wrong with real estate? I have some solutions, but let's go through them. One, this is on market we're talking about. The 5th point is actually for off market, but we're talking about on market real estate generally for if you're a buyer, seller, or investor, and you're looking for an agent. One of the biggest problems is it's like the lowest bar to entry of like any entity. You basically just need to afford the class, pass the class, and then go do whatever steps it needs to get the license. Like that's it. And I'm not saying in any way there should be, you should not have to be a college graduate. I don't think education has anything to do with being a good agent. But the reason that it's a problem that the bar to entry is so low, it's just that everybody can become an agent. And the majority of agents are part-time agents, which some people are okay. But I mean, like, do you really want to buy a house for $500,000 or $1 million with someone who just practices this as a half career? I mean, that's a hard sell to me. So because the bar to entry is so low, it means there's a lot of bad agents. And I don't even know who could even dispute that. It's just true. I mean, all of us who worked with agents over the years before we became one were like, yeah, a lot of my agents were terrible. Some were good. I've had great agents before, but like the majority of agents just aren't that good. It's just, I don't know why, but it's probably has something to do with it's a low bar to entry. So a lot of people get into it. And what I tell my team is you need to treat this like a business, not a job. If your agent is doing a job, they're doing a bad job for you. If your agent is running a business, you know that there's systems in place to take care of you and to make sure that nobody drops the ball along the way. So what's wrong with real estate? Like I just said, number one, it's an extremely low bar to entry in like almost every state. Like you don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops. You do have to do continuing education every year, but like, come on, let's be real. You do that online, you turn it on and you can barely pay attention and just click through and then answer the questions. This isn't, it's not hard. I mean, this is just the truth. So you got low bar to entry. Number 2, have you heard this term? If you're not an agent, you might not have heard this, but I'm about to key you in on what it's like when you know the agent just wants to get that money at the end, because it's a commission business. So the only way we get paid as agents is if we close. It's called commission breath. Have you heard of it? It's when your agent is more focused on the commission than your best interests. And it's extremely common in real estate, I'm sorry to tell you. Many agents have commission breath. Some rightfully so, they need to make the money to pay their bills. I completely understand that. But the problem is, if ever the need to get that commission outweighs the need and ethical responsibility and fiduciary duty to represent your client, it is a problem. It's a big problem. That's why we call it commission breath. You can smell it. It's like, wow, this inspection went terrible. And instead of saying like, listen, these issues are too much, we need to request this amount. If you request this amount, probably going to be a cancellation. People are saying like, no, I mean, it's okay. You can't do that. It's because they're pushing for the commission. They're thinking about themselves first and not the client. I train all of my agents to let go of the ego. Look, plenty of agents need to make money, but there's a good way to make money and a bad way. And in real estate, client and your fiduciary duty and your ethical responsibility always goes to the client first, giving them the best advice, making sure that they understand every part of the process, which is going to actually come up in the next point as well. That's what it is. You can smell commission breath. I don't know what it smells like, but it smells like a need and not a need to do what is best for the client. Number three, what's wrong with real estate? Lack of transparency. It's the worst. I mean, I've been in a lot of businesses where transparency is tough. I mean, transparency across the board is pretty tough. But let's talk about a few things that are not overly transparent in real estate. Sellers disclosures. So every time a property gets listed in most states, a lot of sellers are asked or required to fill out a seller disclosure, which basically says anything that's gone wrong with the house that they know about over the years. Have I ever heard of a gigantic lawsuit for someone who withheld information? No. Do people withhold information on the seller's disclosure? Yes. Does it come back to haunt them? Maybe. Sometimes it comes back to haunt the buyer who never knew about it. So it would be great if we could just all agree to be transparent about what's great and what's wrong with the property. And this actually goes to property descriptions and photos online as well. Let's talk about location anomalies. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like when you see the perfect property and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And you read the description, it sounds so great. You know, you send it to your agent looks at it like, this looks like everything they've been looking for. And neither of us took the time to put it onto Google Maps. And then you go and it's next to like a bar or a graveyard, which is fine with me, but you know, other people don't want to live next to a graveyard, or it's in a flood zone and it wasn't disclosed. Like, can't we just be upfront about the location anomalies so that everybody who goes to look at it and takes their time to go to an open house is very clear on what is going on? Can we all use Google Maps? Yes, but all of us don't have access to run flood zone checks on every property. So if it's in a flood zone, why isn't it out there? Why isn't it out there for us to know? It would just be much easier. Oh, here's a huge lack of transparency issue. It's about permitting. I know a lot about permitting because I'm also a house flipper. We do a lot of renovations at Streamlined Properties, our off-market LLC. Permitting is a big issue. So when you get a new hot water heater or a furnace, you need to have a permit and it needs to be closed out. So when you go to closing, in most areas, you need a certificate of occupancy, and part of that process, they run to see what open permits are left. So one, there's open permits that haven't closed. Sometimes that's okay. It just means someone didn't come back and the work is fine. They just need to call the city or township to come out and do a final inspection, close the permit. Sometimes no permits have even been pulled. So if you're buying a house that has a completely renovated basement and a new bathroom, and you've never seen any permits filed, and you do a permit request, which you can request open permit request application in every jurisdiction, and there's nothing down there, you're going to have trouble closing because the city's going to come out and find out there's all this new material. They may not have approved that bathroom. And PS, if you do unpermitted plumbing or electric work, and then you try to transfer that and the town catches you, you're opening those walls. If the plumber or electrician can't verify the work, because a new plumber or electrician will have to come in and they're not going to sign off on somebody's work behind walls. So permitting is a big lack of transparency. We see it come up in literally almost every transaction, that there's things that are still open. The first thing you want to do when you enter attorney review is to make sure, this is in New Jersey, if you're in an attorney state, is to request an open permit request application so you can see what permits are still open for the house that you're buying. Also at the inspection, they will identify things that they see that should have an inspection sticker on it and do not. Generally, the inspection process in terms of agents is also not as transparent. Really, the whole real estate process isn't as transparent as possible. Part of our job on my team is telling all of my agents to make sure that they go through the roadmap with every buyer and seller. This is what happens in a transaction. This is how we get from A to Z. It's very important because we're trying to set expectations, and that's why a lack of transparency is so prevalent. Some agents don't know, going back to number one, low bar to entry. Some agents don't care, going back to number two, commission breath. But the lack of transparency is not preparing buyers, sellers, and investors for what's going to come, so that when something goes wrong, they think it's major, when if you prepared them, it really wouldn't be. Number 4, this is a good one. What's wrong with real estate? It's accountability. I mean, it's insane. It's insane that the lack of accountability in real estate overall is gigantic. I mean, there's just too much. If you tried to police everything that went wrong with agents or brokers or brokerages, there wouldn't be enough time in the day. And also you would get a ton of false complaints, because a lot of times things happen in real estate that are not agent broker's fault, but are definitely going to be blamed on them. So it goes both ways. I'm not saying anything negative about agents in general. There's lots of great agents, lots of great brokerages. But if you go to the overwhelming percentage, most agents are not full time and doing the work and making sure they're learning everything, which means they're probably not giving you the best advice that you could get. But the problem with accountability, from my experience, is that if you try to make a complaint, it actually goes well with the local boards, but it's just very hard to get some type of resolution. Like, nobody's going to jail for not advising you properly, but should there be some consequences? Yes. I know we're not looking at real estate licenses like very seriously. I wish they were, but again, there would be an overwhelming, there is an overwhelming amount of kind of bad complaints because people are just mad. It's really not somebody's fault. So we don't want to try to be in a scapegoat situation. But listen, I can tell you, when I've had issues with other agents, I've contacted the brokers at the other agencies, and I'd say like 5% of the time I've even gotten a response. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I don't have the answer, but I can just tell you that accountability across the board in real estate is very low. I'm sure some of you know that. There's just not a lot of avenues to turn to. Brokers are busy. The brokerages, as you go higher up, don't care. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a brokerage offer me 6 figures to bring my team over to their brokerage in advance. I said, sure, I'll take that meeting. I go to the meeting, went okay. Then the next day, they advised me that it's actually $3,000 instead of $100,000 or more. I was rightfully annoyed of wasting all of my time and tried to go up the line at this brokerage to talk to anybody. And after I tried 7 different people, I never received a response from anyone because I thought the recruiting practices were wrong. Bait and switch. Never heard back. Anyway, that's 4 of what's wrong with real estate. Now, look, number 5 is important for off-market acquisitions. It's also important for people who kind of like looking at foreclosure type properties and thinking they're right for them when you're just a regular market buyer. So number 5 is wholesaling. Wholesaling in general happens off-market, and it's when a quote wholesaler advises a seller that they're going to buy the property from them. They're actually not buying the property. They're putting a contract on a property that they're going to then take and sell to another person at a spread, which means they're making a profit on that. It's not well looked upon in most real estate circles. Many states are trying to outlaw it. I'm not saying there aren't good wholesalers. There definitely are good wholesalers, but wholesaling in general is kind of like a black eye in real estate. And when you're in the investor circles, there's a lot of murky stuff that goes on in there. So the fact that it's so readily available, and I can tell you from the investor circles that I'm in, which are a lot, everybody wants to become a wholesaler because they think it's their way to get money to invest, but it's not. You're not supposed to be selling real estate without a license. And that's basically what wholesaling is in all aspects in every state. But the biggest problem with wholesaling is that most sellers don't understand that the person who comes in as the wholesaler, they're not buying the property. And then they're going to take the contract and sell it and make whatever, 10,000, 20,000. Can people do it correctly with full disclosures and explanations? Yes, but look, 99% don't. It's a very murky industry. I wish it could be regulated a little bit more. I'm given lots of tips on how someone could do it properly, but you really have to look at the state rules as well. It's a murky situation. So that's it. Those are, when you're sitting around and you're like, I don't know, what is wrong with real estate? These are 5 of them. Low bar to entry, commission breath, lack of transparency, accountability, and wholesaling. I hope this has been helpful. The reason, again, that I know this, I've been investing in real estate since I was a kid driving around with my dad. So I have 30 plus years in investing, 7 plus years as an agent, and many years running a team, talking to other agents. looking through, working and being on local boards, understanding what the drawbacks are. It's nothing against the industry. I love the industry. I just wish that it was a little bit more streamlined, because I think it's a little bit hard for people. And I think I understand when people say like, you're a real estate agent. I can't blame them. There's a lot of bad real estate agents. I just know that I'm not one of them, and no one on my team is going to be one of them. But our goal is to try to help everybody get a better experience. Doesn't even have to be with us. We just want to give you advice that can help you find the best. So if you see these things, or if they resonate, just try to figure out the best way to get around that. Get to know your agent, get to know the team that they work with, and understand what they really provide as an expert for you. Hope you guys have a great day. See you tomorrow.